responsible man here ought to have a will. If you are a man and you have a family, you ought to protect their future. And that comes through having a will. A will is a legal document that says that what you have accumulated in your life, this is how you want it passed on to those that you leave behind. You see, to create a will is saying you are future-minded. You won't always be here. So you're going to be thinking about tomorrow, today, in your financial or asset planning. Unfortunately, what many do not understand is that there are not only wills of physical assets, there are wills of spiritual assets. What you pass on generationally that has spiritual value attached to it. And unfortunately, many men who don't even bother to pass on physical assets refuse to pass on spiritual assets, one or both, because they're not future-minded. And as a result of not being future-minded, there is chaos in the future because there was not clarity set forth in the present. The Bible has a lot to say about legacy, about what is passed on to the next generation and beyond. In fact, Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." Translation, a bad man leaves no inheritance to his children's children. So if there is no future planning, you cannot be dubbed a good man. Because a good man is not only thinking about what's happening with him today, but what will happen on a 3-generational level. He's concerned about today, he's concerned about his children, and then he's concerned about his children's children, his grandchildren. So a man who's not 3-generationally minded, God says is not a good man, because he's not thinking long term. He may only be thinking about today as though tomorrow will never come. In Judges chapter 2, verse 10, it says that there grew up a generation who did not know Joseph, who did not know his God. And as a result, chaos ensued. And when you read the book of Judges, you have a culture in perpetual chaos because there was a transfer of the spiritual baton that did not occur. In fact, the book of Judges says, "And every man did that which was right in his own eyes," because there was no king in those days. There was no standard that had been passed on. Today we live in a day of societal chaos. And that chaos can be rooted back to men who refuse to build a spiritual legacy. Men who refuse to man up to God's requirement for biblical manhood. And like it or not, God starts with holding the man responsible for how the legacy works out or does not. And so we're introduced in this passage of Scripture to a man named Asher. Asher. Let me tell you a little bit about Asher. Verse 30 says, Asher had 4 sons and 1 daughter. Asher was the father of 5 children. And when we end the story of Asher, as you'll see, he comes out pretty good. But he didn't start that way. You see, Asher is the seventh son of Jacob. He is the first son of Zilpah, the seventh son of Jacob. If he's the seventh son of Jacob, that means he's been raised in a dysfunctional family. Because as far as Jacob's family was concerned, Papa was a rolling stone. Wherever he laid his hat was his home. Because Jacob had 12 kids by 4 different women. Jacob created chaos in his family. Asher, the seventh son of Jacob, participated with his brothers in putting Joseph into the pit. So he was part of the conniving group of siblings that wanted to ruin their brother's life. His daddy, Jacob, was known as the trickster or deceiver. He knew how to game. And so he played games all of his life, and that rolled over to his children. So Jacob, the patriarch, created havoc in his family due to his deception. It rubbed off on his boys. His boys destroyed or tried to destroy one of their brothers. He wasn't raised in a good, healthy home environment. It wasn't the kind of environment that would have been inducive to an orderly family structure. There are men here, and since he had a daughter, there are women here who have been raised in dysfunctional families. Your papa was a rolling stone. Wherever he laid his hat was his home. Or you grew up without a father, or he might as well not been there as a father. And there was all kinds of dysfunction in the family that you grew up with. Perhaps there are siblings now you cannot relate to because of the chaos in your home. Well, before you ever get to 1 Chronicles chapter 7, that's Asher. That's his history and his background. It's not a pretty one. It's not to be one to be proud of. But somewhere along the line, there was a transformation that occurred in the life of Asher. Because when we read about him here in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, we're going to give you some good news. So the good news that I want to give all of us here today, especially the men, but the principle applies to all of us, is that your past doesn't have to determine your future. That no matter how messed up your yesterday was, does not have to control what your tomorrow will be like. That you have an option to change your legacy. And that the legacy bequeathed to you does not have to be the legacy you dispense to others. Whether it is your immediate family, whether it's your siblings, or those who come under your influence. Such is the case with the change and transformation that took place in the life of Asher. Well, let's go to verse 40, because we'll see 4 things of Asher's impact and his legacy that ought to be true of every man and every head of household who is here. All these, verse 40 says, were the sons of Asher, heads of the fathers' houses. Heads of the fathers' houses. His 4 boys became heads of houses. They became leaders in their family. Head of a house is a leader of a home. Whatever Asher did when he got right, so influenced his 4 boys that they were able to take up responsible reins in their own families. Let's review what it means to be a head. The Bible teaches that the man is to be the head. That means the man is the one responsible. That's not just saying you the boss, it says you're responsible. It says that his sons became heads of households, that is, leaders within their home, that is, they were willing to own the responsibility for the family. The government's not supposed to raise your children, the neighborhood is not supposed to raise your children. The father in the Bible raises the children, Ephesians 6:4. Fathers raise your children. The man has to own it. He raised his sons to be leaders, to be responsible. Headship is responsibility. Headship also involves direction. It involves direction. Whether it's a president or the head of a company or the head of a church or whatever, headship means you are casting a direction so that people know which way we're going. If you're lost and you got folk following you, they're going to be loster. Since they don't know where you're going, they're either going to follow you nowhere or decide they don't want to go nowhere. They'd rather go somewhere, so they create their own vision. To be a head means that I want to be in close proximity with God so that God can speak to me by his Holy Spirit and give me direction so that those following me will have a place to go. And if you do not have a divine perspective, all you see is what you see, which means you won't see all there is to be seen. That if you're going to be God's head of household and raise the boys to be head of households, a biblical headship is a responsibility that you take on, that you own, because you have been placed there. We live in a day of male abandonment, where men are increasingly refusing to own it. Maybe it's because your father didn't own it. Maybe it's because your mother was domineering. Maybe it's because of negative influences in the culture. Whatever the reason is, it's time to come back home to God. Asher turned that thing around, and whatever caused him to turn it around, because we know the boys got right at the end, whatever caused him to turn it around. So Asher recovered in some way, and he raised his sons to be heads of households with fire and vision. If you're going to be the head, you just can't see the acorn. You got to look at the oak. You got to see bigger than what is, yeah? Things are not looking good, but me and God got to get together, and we got to find out how he wants us to fix this, correct this, straighten this, reorient this. Why? Because you just said you the man. You say you the man. Well, if you the man, you got to man up in a responsible biblical way. The second thing we find out about Asher's sons is he calls them choice men. Choice men. That means cream of the crop. Choice men. They weren't run-of-the-mill guys. Somehow in his turnaround, he said, my boys are not going to be like everybody else's sons. My boys are not going to just run with the crowd. I'm going to raise up some excellent choice, cream of the crop boys with one daughter. I'm going to raise them up to be the men that God has created them to be. Now, we know we have many single parents, and you have been given a double duty. And we value you, we appreciate you, but we can never allow that to get men off the hook for the fathers that they sired that they now have abandoned. If they're not paying their bills, take them to court. They still have a responsibility to the kids. You didn't get pregnant by yourself. And so he wanted to raise them to be expose your kids, especially your boys, to men of high standards if they don't have one in the home. Men who will lead them in the right way. Not perfect men, but men who are moving right, who are not mediocre. We got a generation of young people today whose consciences don't beep. That's because nobody set them. It is the head of the household's job to set the conscience. So that must be established, the divine standard, and walking them through the struggles of that. But you don't change the standard. You administer the standard with love and with compassion. There are two extremes out here. One is to be so compassionate there is no standard. The other extreme is to have the standard without showing compassion. And the idea is to compassionately move to meet the standard. The third thing it says about Asher's sons, he speaks in particularly of, he says they were mighty men in verse 40. Mighty men. They were raised to be warriors. Mighty men. Not mediocre men. These are some mighty dudes. They were raised to be warriors. See, you have to understand we're in spiritual warfare here. We're in a war. You now have to fight for your kids. You have to go to war. Well, right now, you and I live in a post-Christian era. It's called postmodernism, where the absolute standards of right and wrong no longer apply. So people are making up their own rules as they go along of what's right and wrong. So you better not just send them out to play with anybody. You do have to watch what they're being taught in school. They used to be taught creation as an option. Now in many schools, they're taught only evolution as a fact. So unless you watch that, unless you patrol that, unless we look into that, then they will be confused and convoluted when they emerge into adolescence and adulthood. And the thing about it today is they're getting that way earlier. So Nehemiah 4:14 says, okay, since you're going to be a warrior, fight for your family. Fight for your kids. Fight for the future. Wage spiritual warfare. You take them before the throne of grace. You take them, you have devotions with them. You pray over them. Go to war. Because the devil is going to war for them. He says he raised his sons to be warriors. To fight for that which was right. And then he says, fourthly, he raised them to be mentors. Because he says, heads of the princesses. He raised them to be mentors. You see, a prince is a king in waiting. He says they were heads of princesses. They were raising future kings. Many a young man has been spiritually castrated because he's not been given a sense of his royal standing in the family and most importantly with the Lord. They've been duped and ripped because there's no godly male figure who loves God, who loves them, who gives them a biblical worldview, and who spiritually imparts to them so that they take all of God into all of life, into all of their world. God can change your yesterday, no matter how messed up it is, and give you a different tomorrow. I know your daddy wasn't there, or he was a bad daddy that was there. I know you've had bad experiences, and you've had sins and rebellion. I know all that. But then all you are is just give yourself a name. Call yourself Asher. Because you got some dysfunction in your history. But the good news is he shows up in chapter 7 of First Chronicles, a brand new man. So your yesterday doesn't have to control your tomorrow. Because look at how this thing closes. It says at the end of verse 40, and the number of them enrolled by genealogy for service in war was 26,000 men. Oh, wait a minute now. We started off with one man, 4 sons, and 1 daughter. But by the time this man got through, he got 26,000 in his legacy that are ready to go to war. See, you just can't be thinking about you. You got to be thinking about the generations behind you, and you got to build yourself an army of men and women. That meant women were in it because more boys were being born, and so you got to build yourself an army. The problem is Satan has been building his army while God's army has been shrinking. So we got to build an army, 26,000 men. There was a little pygmy one day standing over a rhinoceros. He had killed the rhinoceros. A friend looked at him and said, how did you kill that rhinoceros? The little pygmy said, yeah, I killed the rhinoceros. The man said, how you kill that rhinoceros? You just this big. Oh, he says, it's simple. I killed it with my club. You kill that rhinoceros with your club? Absolutely. The man said, how big is your club? The pygmy said, I got 100 dudes in my club. See, you got to have a club. You got to have a bunch of folk who take a stand with God and with one another. So what God is looking for are men who want to recover, men who want to get back the dignity that God created you with, who want to fulfill the role that God has given you. In Super Bowl 43, when Santonio Holmes caught the pass that won the Super Bowl, don't forget, 1 minute earlier, he had dropped the ball. Ben Roethlisberger threw him the ball and he dropped it. But then Ben Roethlisberger called him back and said, I'm going to throw it to you again, and this time don't drop it. So if you've dropped it yesterday, you got kids you don't live with, kids you sired that you don't talk to, grandkids that you don't know. Okay, you dropped the ball, but God's ready to throw you another pass. And now you got to be willing to catch the ball and move from here. You say, but I wonder whether it's too late. Well, no, it can't be too late. Because in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 21, it says that Jacob, even with his grandchildren, recovered because he blessed his grandchildren while he leaned on his staff just before he died. So if it's too late with your kids, get your grandkids so that you reach them and impact them for time and eternity. A father who went to his son one day and he said, boy, you've been a great boy. I'm proud of you, and I want to do anything you want me to do for you. What do you want? The boy thought for a moment. He said, Daddy, here's what I want. I want you to take me to the zoo. I want to go to the zoo. He said, well, you want to go to the zoo? Yeah, Daddy, that's what I really want to do. He says, okay, let's go to the zoo. He said, Dad, can I bring a few friends? Dad said, that's fine. He came back with 10 friends. He said, 10 guys? He said, yeah, Dad, these are all my buddies. Take us all to the zoo. So he put them in the van, and they all went to the zoo. For 2 hours, they went around looking at all the cages and the birds and the reptiles and all of that. They had a fun time at the zoo. It's time now to leave the zoo. On their way out the zoo, the little boy looks up and he says, Daddy, Daddy. What, son? They're giving elephant rides. Sure enough, over to the side was an elephant man giving rides on his elephant. He said, Daddy, please for a ride. I want to ride on the elephant. He said, well, if we know it's hot out here. We've been out here a long time. He says, please, 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 Daddy, please, Daddy, please, Daddy, let me ride the elephant. He says, okay, let me see how much this costs. He went over to the guy and he says, how much for an elephant ride? Oh, he says, it's $20 a ride. Father said, let's go. Time is up. We got to go. The boy said, oh, Daddy, please, 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 I really want to ride the elephant. He said, I know you want to ride the elephant, son, but it's $20 a ride. It's $10 a year. It's $200. That's too much money to ride the elephant, so we got to go. Daddy, I don't think you understand. Look, Daddy, it's an elephant. I know it's an elephant, son, but it's $20 a ride elephant, and that's just too much money. Daddy, I don't think you're paying attention. Look at that, Daddy. Look at that, Daddy. It's an elephant. I know it's an elephant, but it costs too much to ride the elephant. Daddy, I don't think you're listening to me, and I don't think you're looking. Look, Daddy, it's an elephant. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, this problem is so big, don't look about the cost of your time. Don't look about the cost of your energy. This problem is so big, we need some men who are willing to pay the price in order for the next generation to get a ride.
Legacy is a big deal because that has to do with the generational transfer of things of value. Men, we can not only be concerned about ourselves, but our legacy, what we're leaving to the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that. And while we tend to limit that to material things, houses, money, land, stocks, that has its place. But you need to leave them character and value and integrity and decency. You need to leave them something to be proud of in terms of how they live their lives based on the influence and tradition that was transferred to them, which means that you must leave a legacy of a vibrant faith. That's the key to legacy. And the good news is you can change your legacy. Even if the legacy is flawed, there were flawed legacies in the Bible, we've seen God turn them around when the men got straight with God. So think now in terms of not just your children, but your children's children. Because the Bible is clear that a good man leaves an inheritance, a legacy, to his children's children. So build generational impact, men, because the future generations are depending on us. In New York City, in the harbor of New York City, stands a lady. Inscribed on Lady Liberty, as you so well know, are these words: "Give me your tired and your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shores, send these, the homeless tempest toss, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. On Lady Liberty's crown are 7 spikes, reflecting 7 seas and 7 continents, where the invitation stands open to all to come to freedom. At the base of Lady Liberty is a chain that has been broken. She stands there in the harbor of New York to represent what this nation was to be founded upon and the nature of how it operates. She's called Lady Liberty because she stands for freedom. Freedom is not something that belongs to a country or nation. Freedom is something that God offered in the Garden of Eden. From every tree of the garden you may freely eat. Paul has made it clear in one of our previous discussions that it was for freedom Christ has set you free. He set you free to be free. He didn't set you free to stay in bondage. And yet, many of us today find ourselves bound. Personal bondages, known as addictions, the biblical phrase for it, strongholds, things that are holding us hostage and keeping us from being what we know God wants us to be. I'm not talking about the person who doesn't care now. I'm not talking about the person who's in rebellion. I'm talking about the person who really wants to be free. They want to leave where they are and get to where they're supposed to go. And you're looking for freedom. There are relational bondages where people are bound to people that they shouldn't be bound to, or known as codependency, or people wanting to know, do I have to stay in this relationship? Am I stuck here? Am I bound to this unhappy situation I find myself in? And they are longing to be free. There are circumstantial bondages that people find themselves in, whether it's economic, and they're bound by the reality of not having enough or barely having enough to make ends meet. Or maybe they're physical realities where they're bound to feeling bad because of circumstances happening within their bodies. And they long to be free from the disease. Freedom, or the desire for freedom, comes in all shapes and all sizes. We have explained freedom does not mean no restrictions. Freedom means being released from illegitimate restrictions. You're not free to live in water because you weren't created for that. So you're bound by air and land. So freedom doesn't mean the absence of restrictions. It just means the removal of illegitimate restrictions. God in the garden gave a restriction: from every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but the tree in the midst of the garden you may not. That is off limits. That is a legitimate restriction. So the issue in freedom is not whether there's restriction versus no restriction. When you watch a football game, there will be restrictions. There will be boundaries so that the game can be free to be played. No boundaries, there's chaos in the stadium. It is the removal of illegitimate boundaries. So the question to discuss freedom is this boundary legitimate or illegitimate? And one of the things that you will always know about freedom, and that is that boundaries will always enhance it, never destroy it, if it's a legitimate boundary. Having said all we've said, and we've talked about freedom up, down, in and out, how do we conclude? Jesus Christ has now gone public. He is now asserting who he is as the Son of God and the Son of Man, all God, all man in one person. The most unique person who has ever entered history. There is nobody like Jesus Christ. He is to be compared with no one, because there's no other name other than the name of Jesus that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, to the glory of the Father. He is in a class by himself. He is fully God, but he's also fully man. As a man, his job was to represent God in history. And so he got hungry because he was a man. He said, I thirst because he was a man. He had to sleep because he was a man. But he could walk on water because he was God. He could raise the dead because he was God. He could move in his humanity based on his relationship to deity. He comes to the synagogue in the neighborhood where he grew up, Nazareth. And they hand him the book of Isaiah, and he turns the pages and comes to Isaiah chapter 61, and then he quotes it or reads it. He says in verse 18 of Luke 4, as he's reading Isaiah 61, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, and he has anointed me to preach good news. The gospel. The word gospel means good news. When we talk about the gospel, we're talking about good news. That's what it means. The euangelion, that is the good message. Good news. And it was good news about freedom. He says, I have good news for poor people. He says, I've got good news to captives. I've got good news to the blind. And I've got good news to the oppressed. All of them need to be freed from something. The poor from poverty. The captives from their captivity. The blind from sightlessness. The oppressed from their slavery. He says, I have come to declare good news, and the Spirit of God is upon me and has anointed me. When he says that he has been anointed, it means he has been duly dubbed. He has been identified and recognized by God through the Holy Spirit to proclaim good news. Jesus Christ has good news to you and me today about freedom. And he's the authorized representative of God as a man to tell other men and women the good news of freedom. In the Old Testament, to be anointed meant to be dubbed. David was anointed as king. That means he was one recognized as having been identified with God, by God, as the new leader for Israel, or as the next priest. He has been selected, if you will. Jesus Christ has been uniquely selected to proclaim to people good news about freedom. And the Spirit is backing him up. The Spirit of God is upon me. In other words, this is a supernatural offer. This isn't folk talking to other folk about freedom. This is a supernatural offer. Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, has come here today based on his word to make a supernatural offer because he's been authorized to do so. I made a phone call for a repair I needed at my home, and I called and I was trying to get it worked out where the person would work out the repair, and I needed some other things done, and her statement was, "Sir, I'm going to have to get my supervisor because I'm not authorized to do that. I haven't been anointed." In other words, there has been no recognition that I can give you what you're asking for. Now, I sincerely asked her. She sincerely wanted to help, but she didn't have the anointing. She was not duly dubbed
and recognized as having the capacity to give me what I needed to fix what was broke in my house. She called her supervisor to the phone. Her supervisor, a gentleman, came to the phone, and I explained to him the situation that I was having to get rectified, and he said, I am not authorized to do what you're asking me to do. I somewhat evangelically ticked off, said, because you know, them phone calls can last a long time, and so I said, well, can you get me somebody who has the authority, the authorization, the power to respond to my need? I got something broke. I need something fixed. But everybody I'm talking to, they want to help me, but they can't help me because they haven't been authorized. I need somebody with some power, some clout, who has been anointed to be able to speak. I don't need somebody that's got to go to somebody else, has got to go to somebody else, got to go to somebody else, got to go to somebody else. I want to get to the right person who has been duly authorized to fix my broke down situation. Finally, I got somebody on the line who had been anointed, who had the power to take care of what a lot of other folks wanted to help me with, but were incapable of solving. See, a lot of us been seeking freedom in all the wrong places. We've been going to scenarios that maybe want to help, would like to help, but they've not been anointed. They are not duly authorized to be able to set you free. But Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, and I have been duly authorized. I have been anointed in order to set the captives free or to proclaim good news. So I'm closing this series today with some gospel. That means good news. Some good news that freedom is staring you right in the face. And I don't know what you need to be free from, but whatever it is, I know somebody who's duly authorized to offer it. Jesus opens the Bible and says, I've been duly authorized. Some of you, some of us have been trying to be free from something for years. You name it, and there's somebody in here that has it. It may be pornography, it may be gambling, it may be drugs, it may be alcohol, it may be cigarettes, it may be a cursing tongue, it may be an illegitimate relationship, it may be whatever it is. You've been trying for years. You've been like a hamster. You ever seen a hamster on a wheel? It's trying to go somewhere. That hamster is trying to go somewhere. Sometimes it goes slow and sometimes it goes fast. It's trying, but all it is going in circles. It's going in circles because it's been boxed in a cage. You know what that hamster needs? It needs somebody to reach in there and pick it up out of its situation. Because no matter how hard it tries and how fast it goes, it will never be any further when it finishes than when it started. Why? Because it's boxed in to an enslaved situation. But if somebody that's not locked in can reach in and lift it out, it can deliver it from its wheel kind of life. And somebody's been churning on a wheel and you tired of running in the same spot. But I know somebody who's been duly authorized and anointed with supernatural power to set captives free. There's some here today and people that you know who feel like it's hopeless. This is my lot in life, and I'm just going to muddle through, try to make it, get by the best that I can, and you've given up on ever thinking about being free. In other words, you've gotten used to slavery. You've gotten used to whatever mental, emotional, physical incarceration you're going through. This has become your lot in life. This is just the way it is. You know, how many have gone to Disneyland or Disney World? You've been to either one of those two, okay? Most of you. You know, after about 2 or 3 hours in Disneyland and Disney World, you begin to think that all that stuff has been sized correctly. Now, in other words, these are miniature buildings. When you walk in there, these are miniature buildings. But if you're there long enough, it looks normal. Because that's all you're surrounded with. So it looks like this is the way it's supposed to be till you come back out. And you're faced with the real deal about the real size of things. In other words, you can be duped into thinking this is how things are supposed to be. Because you've been hanging there for 2, 3, 4, 5, or all day. You've been hanging out there, so this is the way it's supposed to be. When that's not the real world. You've been duped to think that's the real world because you've been hanging there too long. Jesus Christ says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has anointed me to proclaim good news. The gospel is good news. It is good news about eternity, because when you trust Jesus Christ, that means you're on your way to heaven. When you go to the cross for the forgiveness of sins, you're on your way to heaven. That's good news. It's good news to know the thing you fear most will never happen: death. Most people, if they gave their greatest fear, would be to die. The good news of the gospel is you will never die. The Bible says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. As soon as you die, you won't be dead long enough to know you died, because you are immediately ushered into the presence of the Lord. So the thing you fear most, or most people fear most, is the thing that will never ever happen, because immediately you're ushered into the presence of the Lord if you've come to Jesus Christ for salvation. But the good news is bigger than heaven. Bigger is not the better word, because heaven is eternal. But it is more than heaven. The good news includes earth. Please notice the passage. He says, I've come to proclaim good news to the poor. Now, if you're poor, what's good news? That something is going to address your poverty. That something is going to change your status in life. If you're poor, that means something better is coming along. That's good news. If you're poor and you hear next week you're going to be poorer, that's bad news. If you're in captivity, good news is that you are going to be released, that somebody has posted bail. If you're in jail and somebody posts bail, that's good news, that you're going to be released from your captivity. If you're blind and now you know you're going to get to see, that's good news. If you're oppressed, somebody's got their foot on your neck, on your back, and you've discovered now that you're going to be released from that oppressive situation, that's good news. But this is not just about heaven, because you aren't poor in heaven. You aren't oppressed in heaven. You aren't blind in heaven. These are earth's issues. Now, when people write about this passage, you'll see two extremes. There will be the spiritual interpretation that none of this is physical, it's spiritual poverty, it's spiritual captivity, it's all spiritual. So it doesn't relate to people's social condition. It doesn't relate to slavery in America or in South Africa. It doesn't relate to that. It's all spiritual. Then you've got the liberation theology that makes it all social. Come to Jesus and he'll change the economics of the day, and he'll change the social structures of the day, and he'll change the political environments of the day. And to pick either extreme is to miss the point. Jesus starts off with, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. So he starts off spiritual, but his spiritual perspective goes to a practical reality. I am glad that Jesus Christ and my relationship with him is going to take me to heaven. I'm glad about that. But I'm also glad that my relationship with him can affect circumstances in history. To affect circumstances in history and I miss out on eternity, well, that's not good. If a man doesn't have a place to stay, that's bad, but he can recover from that. If a person doesn't have the best food to eat, that's bad, but he can recover from that. If a person doesn't have the nicest clothes, that's bad, but he can recover from that. If a person doesn't have a great job and is living on minimum wage, that's bad, but he can recover from that. But if a man or woman dies without a relationship with Jesus Christ, you just hit him with a blow he can never recover from. So merely to say that this is a social reality is not good enough. On the other hand, to tell me that Jesus can get me to heaven, but he's not much benefit to me on my way there. To tell me that I got a home in heaven, but he can't give me a home on earth. To tell me that, up in heaven, I got shoes, you got shoes, all God's children got shoes, but I got to go bare feet on earth. To tell me I've got a white robe up there, but I can't get a coat down here, would seem to suggest that Jesus Christ is so otherworld-minded that he can't practically meet me where I am today. To understand how all this fits together, you have to understand the last phrase in verse 19. He says, I've come to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. Jesus said, I have come to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. Now, to what does that refer? Every Jew there understood what Jesus was talking about. Look at verse 20. And he closed the book, gave it back to the attendant, sat down, and the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Okay, wait a minute. All he did was read the scripture. How are you going to be paralyzed? That's fixed on him. Bug-eyed on him. How are you going to be fixed on him? All he did was read the Bible. Because they understood when he quoted Isaiah 61, they understood the implications because the Jews were captive under Rome when he read this. They were looking for Messiah who would deliver them. In fact, the Jews in Israel today are still looking for Messiah because they rejected Jesus. So they're looking for somebody to deliver them in their Middle Eastern dilemma. Because when Messiah comes, he's going to bring peace to the Middle East and he's going to change this situation. We are waiting because they understood back then and they understand today that it would be Messiah, which means the anointed one, who would bring deliverance to our historical dilemma. What they're waiting for is the acceptable year of the Lord. Now, what that refers to is Leviticus chapter 25. It was called the year of Jubilee. Let me just tell you a little something about the year of Jubilee. Because what Jesus is offering them, and guess what? What he's offering you is Jubilee. In Leviticus chapter 25, here's what Jesus says.
Here's what God says, beginning with verse 8. You are also to count off 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years, so that you have the time of the 7 Sabbaths of years, namely 49 years, 7 times 7. You then shall sound a ram's horn abroad on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement. You shall sound a horn all through the land. You shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim a release. Remember, release to the captives. A release through the land to all the inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. And each of you shall return to his own property. Each of you shall return to his family. You shall have the 50th year as a jubilee. You shall not sow nor reap its aftergrowth, nor gather in from its untrimmed vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy for you. You shall eat its crops of the field. On this year of jubilee, each of you shall return to his own property. If you make a sale, moreover, your friend or buy from your friend's hand, you shall not wrong one another, corresponding to the number of years of jubilee. Verse 17, so you shall not wrong one another, but you shall fear God, for I am the Lord your God. Let me tell you about the year of jubilee, or the acceptable year of the Lord's year. Okay, this is the Lord's year. He says every 49 years, you are to proclaim the year of jubilee. Because over this period of time, society will be set back. You're going to get in debt. You're going to lose property. Some people will have sold themselves into slavery. He'll go into that later on in that chapter about the setting the slaves free. He says things are going to get out of whack. So every 49th year, I want you to introduce the year of Jubilee, where I'm going to put stuff right again that y'all have messed up. Every 49th year, I'm going to change your jacked up situation by declaring a year of liberation, a year of Jubilee. Let me tell you a little bit about the year of Jubilee. In the year of Jubilee, all debts were canceled. Wouldn't somebody like a year of Jubilee?
In the year of Jubilee, whatever bills were owed were now canceled, and you started all over again. In the year of Jubilee, all slaves had to be set free and released. Property was returned to its original owner, because this was the Lord's Jubilee. It was a celebration that released from debt, released from slavery, released from illegitimacy, and God was now putting things right again, setting people free. Jesus said, I have come to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say God wants to offer you Jubilee. And that's good news. The acceptable year of the Lord. The year that the Lord wants to come and make stuff right for you again. Some of us are in debts that we shouldn't be in. And God says, I got good news. I've got good news for you who are in impressive situations. I've got good news. I've got good news for you who are in addictions. I've got good news. My good news is the acceptable year of the Lord. But I hear what you're saying. You're saying, but Pastor, I can't wait 49 years. I can't wait 7 times 7. Read verse 21. He said to them, today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. In other words, he told his audience, you don't have to wait any longer. You don't have to wait and hope next year is better. You don't have to wait to January 1 to make New Year's resolutions. God says, today, right here, right now is your Jubilee. So these folk are staring at him like he crazy, like some of you are staring at me like I'm crazy. He's so crazy. You mean I've been dealing with this thing all these years and you talking about today? You talking about right now? He says, today. Now let me give you the bad news before I close again with the good news. The bad news is that they didn't get free. That's the bad news. The bad news is that they didn't get delivered. The bad news is that that situation didn't change. Well, how can he say today and nothing got better for the Jewish people? And they're still not better. Because he said, I have come to proclaim good news. Underline proclaim. I'm going to give you the good news. But you must accept the good news for the good news that I tell you about to become good news for you. In other words, you can hear good news and amen good news, praise the Lord good news, hallelujah good news, and in God great good news, and not experience the good news for you. You see, back in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 9, when God says, this shall be a jubilee with you, it was inaugurated with the Day of Atonement. In other words, you didn't get the social until you got the spiritual. Okay, is everybody with me? The Day of Atonement was when you got right with God. He says, when you get right with me, Day of Atonement, debts will be canceled. Slaves will be released. Families will be put back together again, he says in the passage. If you skip the Day of Atonement, in order to get the social benefits of Jubilee, you don't get the spiritual and you lose out on the social. See, a lot of people who want God to do stuff in history don't want the Day of Atonement. They want to skip the spiritual and get right to God, pay my bills. Get right to, God, get me out of this addiction. Get right to, God, fix my family. Get right to, God, make this better, when they have skipped the thing that inaugurates the day. If the spiritual is not foundational, if the spiritual is not the first thing, if the spiritual is not priority, if the spiritual gets thrown by the wayside, if all that matters to you when you come to church is to hear the sermon, you're not going to get Jubilee. In fact, the most important thing that happens in our church is not the sermon, it's communion, because that's atonement. Because it is there at the cross that I reestablish my relationship with Christ, where I'm forgiven for my sins for sanctification, where I recommit myself to follow under the lordship of Jesus Christ. That happens at the cross. That doesn't happen in the sermon. But people want the sermon without the cross and wonder why they're not free. The Day of Atonement had to precede the experience of freedom. Today, I deliver this message in your hearing. I am the anointed one. That is, I have the power to grant release based on your response to me. The reason why the Jews didn't get free was they rejected him, but they wanted freedom. You cannot sideline Jesus and get victory. You can't sideline Jesus and get freedom. You can't sideline Jesus and be released. You can't be a secret agent Christian and be released. That comes with the full recognition of the lordship of Jesus Christ. And if Jesus Christ doesn't have say-so in your life, lordship, rule, control, if the relationship spiritually is not the priority, then don't expect to get the release that he's talking about. And the release that he's talking about, he's offering it today. Today. The anointing. Yeah, let me say this. The anointing is closer than you think. Because if you're here this morning and you're a Christian, Christ is in you. You got people running around here saying, I wish I was anointed. Well, 1 John 2:20 says, you are. It says if you're a Christian, you have the anointing. The anointed one has already anointed you. Because the anointed one, if you are a Christian, is living inside of you. You have the anointing. You looking for something you already have. I was looking for my keys. You know how frustrating it is when you can't find your keys? You're in a hurry, you got to go somewhere, you got an appointment, and first of all, you're frantic. So you go, you're just looking everywhere, you're looking everywhere, and you just bouncing around. Then you say, okay, this is not working. Let me structure my search. And so now you structure it, and you go from room to room, from spot to spot, and you're trying to find it. Okay, the structure doesn't work. So now you're looking in places where maybe it fell between the pillars and the couch, and so now you're looking, and it's so frustrating. I couldn't find my keys. I'm late. I'm going nowhere because I can't find my car keys. In the midst of my frustration, I throw up my hands and hit my side. I pull the keys out of my pocket because I'm searching for something I already have. I'm searching for something I already have. I'm searching for something I already possess. You already have the check. Cash it. Jesus Christ is already set up to set you free. He's already proclaiming freedom to the captives. But the Day of Atonement, that is your relationship spiritually, will determine your freedom in all the dimensions of your life. If the spiritual is out of whack, don't expect the social to get ordered. Harry Houdini, you know him, the famous escape artist. He bragged that he could escape from anywhere. Anywhere. And they said, well, we have a cell you can't escape out of, Houdini. He said, bring it on. They took him to this cell, and he had this metal object he would always use to pick locks and to break out. He took out the object and he began to work it and work it and work it, but it wasn't working this time. It wasn't working this time. He took off his shirt and began to work it and work it. It wasn't working. He took off his t-shirt because he's sweating. He's now 4 hours into this thing, and the great Houdini is stuck. It's not that he's not trying. It's not that he's not sweating and making a resolution, I'm going to break out of here. It just wasn't working. He threw down his metal thing and just fell against the door, and it flew open. He was trying to unlock something that was already unlocked. He who the Son sets free is free indeed. On the cross, Jesus unlocked the cell, and you fighting to get what you already have. And that is freedom.